As a digital artist, I have downloaded, created and used hundreds of brushes.
Nice.
And out of those, there were only a few that I actually found useful. Every time I see an artist creating some amazing artwork, I try to get my hands on their brushes because I also want to create amazing art. And then I use the brushes only to realize that these brushes don't really work for me. It rarely happens that I end up liking the brushes of another artist. So if you're expecting there to be some kind of a magical brush that will suddenly make your art better, then you're gonna be disappointed. Unless you are using an AI brush. But the brushes that you use still matters because they can definitely help in defining your style and your approach to painting. So how do you choose your brushes? To give you that answer, I will tell you how I chose my brushes. The most important brush in my brush set is the hard-drawn brush. Hard-drawn brush makes up to about 80 to 90% of my workflow. The reason I use the hard-drawn brush as my main brush is, as I mentioned, that I prefer simple things and I don't want to overcomplicate my process. And I am also kinda lazy, so I don't want to think too much. Now, I use a few different variations of the hard-drawn brush based on the brush settings. The first is a regular hard-drawn without any settings turned on. And I mainly use it for blocking in colors. Because of how hard the edge of this brush is, it's very useful in defining the shapes in your paintings. And I would say that shape design is more important than rendering if you want your paintings to look more interesting. That's a tip that you should definitely remember. You can also use the hard-drawn brush for line art, though it's not my favorite use of this brush because it's not very controllable and I don't like the way it feels. For me, this brush definitely has limited usage, but it's still a brush that I would suggest you keep in your arsenal. The second variation, which is also the most useful, is the hard-drawn brush with pressure opacity and flow set to pen pressure. Pressure opacity has to be the most useful setting in digital art. I have gotten so used to it that I cannot fathom making digital paintings without it. If I were to given an option to choose only one brush for the rest of my life, then without thinking twice, this is the brush I would choose. Because this brush can do almost everything. You can use it for line art, you can use it for paintings, and you can also use it for blending. The pressure opacity allows you to build colors on top of each other, which is called glazing, making it feel quite natural and intuitive. One quick tip for this brush is if you want it to blend better, then keep the brush spacing between 10 to 15 and also lower the hardness to around 80% and you have got yourself a pretty amazing brush. And for all those reasons, this is my most recommended brush. I have other variations of the hard-drawn brush, like this brush with only flow turned on. It's not as useful as the brush with pressure opacity, but it does have its uses. Also, I have this opacity brush with some textures on it. I don't use it very often, but I think some people will definitely prefer it over a regular opacity brush. There is another default brush I use that I would say is the most popular because of how beginner friendly it is. The brush that I'm talking about is the soft brush. It is kind of the opposite of the hard-drawn brush because it has an extremely soft edge. Now, how is the soft brush useful? With other brushes, if you wish to create a soft edge, you have to do it manually, either by continuously color picking or using a separate blending brush. But soft brush, on the other hand, because of its soft edge, doesn't require manual blending. It blends colors automatically. It is literally eliminating one of the main steps of painting. And because of that, it is very useful when painting rounded forms and gradients. Every kind of lighting in real life creates a gradient. So if you want more realism in your paintings, then you should be using the soft brush. But the problem is that a lot of people, especially the beginners, end up abusing the soft brush. By abusing, I mean that they paint everything with the soft brush. They paint the soft edges with the soft brush and they paint the hard edges with the soft brush. And that makes their paintings look very digital. And trust me, you don't want that look. So make sure that you avoid that. Now, line art and sketching are another important thing for me. A lot of people use the hard-drawn brush for sketching and I also do that sometimes, but I needed something better. So I created my own line art and sketching brushes. I created a few, but I used like 3 of them. First one is this pencil brush that actually acts a lot like a pencil. I normally use it for sketching and drawing practices. The second one is this pencil 2, which acts more like a pen. I use it mostly to create line art for my paintings. Third is this line art brush with size set to pen pressure. I use it when I need some line weight in my drawings. If you wish to try out any of these brushes for yourself, you can download them from my Gumroad. The link is in the description. The next very important thing for me is blending edges. This very much depends on your style, whether you want to blend or not. A lot of artists choose to paint with only hard edges and not blend at all. However, I prefer to contrast hard and soft edges in my paintings. There is no one way of painting, just do what suits your taste. Now, I use two different brushes for blending. First is the soft brush, which I have already talked about. And the way you blend with the soft brush is basically you color pick one of the two colors you want to blend and just paint over them. Very simple. My second brush for blending is the mixture brush tool, used with this bristly brush preset. And this is by far my favorite way of blending colors. This is a brush that I found in Ahmed Alduri's brush pack, and this is one of the only few brushes from another artist that I actually use regularly. This brush is great for two reasons. One, it blends really well, and two, it feels very natural. This brush works a lot like a dry brush. To blend the colors, you just need to smudge them around. The next set of brushes that I use almost regularly for my paintings are these brushes that I call special effect brushes. I mean, these can't really create special effects, but that's what I like to call them. I use these brushes after I am done with rendering and want to create some texture variations with my paintings. These are not necessary by any means, but I think if used properly, these brushes can add a lot of interest to your paintings. If you look at this painting where I have used these brushes, you can clearly see the difference. This is before and after. Before and after. So these were my main brushes that I use regularly to create my paintings. I do have more brushes that I do use sometimes, but personally they are not very important for me. So go on, try out more brushes and see what works for you. And this is it for this video. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.